welcome to this deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
You've sent us a really interesting mix of sources about the CIA,
Yeah.
YouTube videos, articles, even some historical overviews.
Okay.
It seems like you're especially drawn to their covert operations.
Right.
And how the agency has evolved over time, from cloak and dagger missions to their role in today's world.
That's right. And I think what we're about to discuss will feel like something out of a spy thriller.
Oh, for sure.
But with real-world consequences that resonate even today.
Definitely.
Yeah.
One name that immediately caught my eye in your sources was Marita Loren.
Oh, yeah.
Our story, especially her connection with Fidel Castro, seems like something straight out of a Cold War movie.
It's a captivating story.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine this.
Okay.
A 19-year-old woman has a chance encounter with Fidel Castro, leading to a whirlwind romance. It sounds like the plot of a novel, but this was real life.
Right.
And it quickly became entangled with the CIA's interests.
It seems the CIA saw Marita as a potential way to get to Castro, someone they considered a major threat.
Yes.
She had a level of access to him that their seasoned spies could only dream of.
Exactly. The fear of communism spreading throughout Latin America.
Oh,
was very real in the U.S. at the time, and Castro was seen as a symbol of that threat.
Right.
He surrounded himself with layers of security.
Oh, I bet.
But Marita was able to bypass all of that.
And from what I've gathered, her young age and vulnerability played a part in how the CIA approached her, especially after a suspected forced abortion.
Yes. The sources describe a traumatic experience for Marita.
Oh, wow.
It appears the CIA leveraged her feelings of betrayal and loss, while also appealing to her desire to protect the U.S., painting Castro as a dangerous enemy.
And this is where we encounter those poison pills, a detail that feels ripped from a James Bond film.
The poison was botulinum toxin.
Oh, wow.
Chosen for its untraceable nature and quick dissolution.
Okay.
It was a way for the CIA to eliminate Castro without leaving a clear link back to them.
Right.
Minimizing the risk to Marita and maintaining plausible deniability.
So the scene is set.
Okay.
Marita's back in Havana.
Yeah.
The poison is ready. What happened next?
The plan was for her to discreetly slip the pills into Castro's drink.
Oh, wow.
At his penthouse.
Okay.
However, the pills, hidden in cold cream to smuggle them past customs, ended up coated in residue.
So something as simple as cold cream almost derailed the entire operation.
Right.
It's amazing how these seemingly insignificant details
can
have such a huge impact.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Marita couldn't extract the pills in time.
Okay.
Castro walked in on her and she panicked.
Oh, wow.
Ultimately confessing the plot to kill him.
Ideal is to let her go after she admitted to being sent to assassinate him.
According to Marita's own account, Castro handed her his gun, almost daring her to take the shot.
Oh, my God.
It seems he had complete faith in his security and his ability to control the situation.
Yeah.
Marita, understandably, couldn't bring herself to pull the trigger.
That's a gripping story.
Yeah.
It really makes you question Castro's mindset in that moment.
Yeah.
Was it genuine confidence, a power play, or something else entirely?
It's difficult to say for sure.
Yeah.
Castro was known for his charisma and his control over those around him. Perhaps he saw it as an opportunity to manipulate Marita, expose the CIA, or even reinforce his image of invincibility.
This first attempt may have failed,
Yeah.
but the sources indicate that it was just the beginning of a long and frankly disturbing campaign by the CIA to eliminate Castro.
That's right. Hundreds of plots were devised against Castro.
Wow.
Ranging from elaborate schemes to more outlandish ideas like exploding cigars.
He's like a cartoon.
It seems the more the CIA failed,
Yeah.
the more determined they became.
And yet Castro managed to survive it all.
Right.
This raises a thought-provoking question.
Yeah.
How did these constant assassination attempts shape his rule?
I know.
His paranoia, his grip on power.
Right.
It must have had a profound psychological impact.
It undoubtedly did.
Yeah.
Living under constant threat likely fueled his obsession with security and his ruthlessness in crushing dissent.
Yeah.
Ironically, the CIA's actions might have inadvertently strengthened Castro's control over Cuba.
It's interesting how an attempt to destabilize a regime may have inadvertently had the opposite effect.
Yes, and this speaks to the unintended consequences that often accompany covert operations, a theme we see play out time and again in the CIA's history.
This deep dive is already filled with twists and turns.
It is.
But now let's shift gears a bit.
Okay.
To a different side of the CIA.
Okay.
Their role in rescuing assets.
Yeah.
This seems like a completely different set of skills.
It does.
And challenges.
Right. Your research also included material on the Argo escape.
Oh, yeah.
Which unfolded during the Iran hostage crisis in 1979.
Okay.
It presents a fascinating contrast to the Castro plots.
Yeah.
Highlighting the CIA's flexibility and resourcefulness.
I actually remember this from the movie.
Oh, really?
A group of American diplomats trapped in Tehran.
Uh-huh.
And the CIA devising this wild plan to get them out.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds unbelievable, almost too far-fetched to be true.
It does sound like a Hollywood script.
Yeah.
But it really happened.
Well,
imagine the pressure on the CIA.
Yeah.
6 Americans stranded in a hostile country
wow.
during a major international crisis.
Right.
A direct rescue was out of the question.
Yeah.
It had to be something covert, something extraordinary.
And that's where Tony Mendez comes in, right? The master of disguise from the CIA's Office of Technical Service, or OTS.
Mendez specialized in getting people out of seemingly impossible situations.
Oh, well.
The Argo operation presented unique challenges.
Yeah.
These were ordinary diplomats, not trained spies. They had American identities, making them easily recognizable in Iran.
Yeah.
Extracting them required ingenuity and a lot of creativity.
So how did they come up with a plan to get them out?
Okay.
I'm really curious to know how they navigated this extremely delicate situation.
This is where the CIA's creativity shines.
Okay.
Mendez decided to craft a cover story so outlandish that it would be dismissed as pure fiction.
Oh, wow.
He proposed the diplomats pose as a Hollywood film crew, scouting locations for a fake science fiction movie.
A fake Hollywood production in the middle of a hostage crisis.
I know.
That's incredible.
Right.
Did they really go through with it?
It sounds like a gamble, but it worked.
Wow.
Mendez flew to Hollywood.
What?
Set up a fake production company.
Oh, my gosh.
Even went so far as to create a script.
Wow.
Based on an unproduced film called Lord of Light.
Wow.
They even concocted a fake movie title, Argo.
Oh, okay.
A name that would later become synonymous with this daring rescue.
That level of detail and commitment is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
I'm guessing the diplomats didn't have any acting experience to prepare them for this elaborate ruse.
These were ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary situation.
Wow.
Mendez and his team had to train them to act like a film crew.
Okay.
Develop believable backstories and even age documents with scotch to make them appear authentic.
It sounds like they really thought of everything.
I know.
So they had the cover story, the fake identities, but what was the escape plan itself?
Oh,
Did they try to sneak out under the cover of darkness?
No, their plan was even bolder than that. They aimed to walk right out of Iran in broad daylight, posing as Canadian filmmakers.
Oh, wow.
Mendez managed to secure real Canadian passports and meticulously prepared all the necessary documentation to make the ruse convincing.
Wow. So they just walked through the airport pretending to be filmmakers.
Right.
That takes a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Considering they were surrounded by people who could have easily exposed them.
It was a high-risk operation, and every detail had to be perfect.
Right.
There were tense moments, like when one of the escapees nearly blew their cover by picking up a Farsi newspaper.
Really?
But thanks to meticulous planning, the CIA's expertise, and a bit of luck, all 6 Americans made it out of Iran safely.
And to think this entire operation remained secret for 17 years.
I know.
It wasn't until the late 90s that the Argo escape was declassified.
Right.
It really highlights the CIA's ability to operate under the radar, achieving their objectives with a level of secrecy that's almost unimaginable.
It's a testament to their ability to think outside the box, adapt to complex situations, and utilize every resource at their disposal. The Argo operation shows a different facet of the CIA compared to the more forceful approach they employed in the attempts on Castro's life.
It's fascinating to see how they can be so adaptable, shifting from covert assassination attempts to elaborate rescue missions.
Right.
But our deep dive doesn't stop there.
Okay.
The sources you sent also point towards a darker chapter.
Okay.
The Beirut barracks bombing and the CIA's subsequent response.
Right.
This seems to take us into morally complex territory.
Yes, this part of our exploration delves into the ethical complexities of covert operations.
Okay.
The 1983 bombing of the Marine barracks in Beirut was a devastating event that resulted in the death of 241 American service members.
Wow.
It forced the CIA to confront the brutal reality of terrorism and grapple with the difficult task of combating it.
I remember reading about William Casey, the CIA director at the time.
Right.
It sounds like he was a very driven, some might even say ruthless figure who was determined to seek retribution for the attack.
Casey was a product of the Cold War era, a man who believed in meeting force with force.
Oh, wow.
He took the Beirut bombing personally, viewing it as a direct assault on American power that demanded a decisive response.
But there were legal obstacles to his plans for retaliation, right? Targeted assassinations were essentially off limits after the scandals of the 70s. It seems his hands were tied. At least from a legal standpoint.
You're right. President Ford had issued an executive order prohibiting U.S. intelligence agencies from carrying out assassinations. This was partly in response to the Church Committee hearings, which revealed a number of controversial activities undertaken by the CIA, leading to public outcry and demands for greater oversight.
So how did Casey manage to circumvent those restrictions? Did he just ignore them completely?
He found ways to be creative, at least in his interpretation of the law. He argued that eliminating key figures in terrorist organizations could be justified as self-defense, a preemptive strike to prevent future attacks.
I can understand how that argument might have been persuasive. Especially in the highly charged atmosphere after the Beirut bombing. But it also raises some serious ethical and legal questions. Where do you draw the line between self-defense and an extrajudicial killing?
That's the crux of the issue, and it's a debate that continues to this day. But in the context of the 1980s, with the Cold War still raging and terrorism emerging as a significant threat, Casey's arguments gained traction within certain circles.
So he had his justification, at least in his own mind. But who did the CIA actually target? Who became the focus of their retaliation efforts?
Their attention shifted towards Sheikh Fadlallah, a prominent cleric based in Lebanon. He emerged as a central figure in their investigations following the Beirut bombing.
What made Fadlallah their primary target? What led them to believe he was the mastermind behind the attack?
The CIA believed he was a key leader of Hezbollah. The group they now suspected was behind the barracks bombing. Intelligence gathered from both Israeli and Lebanese sources pointed to Fadlallah's involvement, solidifying him as a prime target in their eyes.
But we've already discussed how Hezbollah was a shadowy organization, notoriously difficult to penetrate. How did the CIA plan to reach Fadlallah and carry out their operation?
This is where things become murkier, relying on accounts that are still disputed today. Some sources, including journalist Bob Woodward, who had extensive access to Casey, claim that the CIA opted to utilize a third party for the attack. Specifically, they turned to Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
That's an interesting twist.
It is.
What would their motivation be for getting involved in such a risky operation?
It's believed that the Saudis shared Casey's belief that Fadlallah was a dangerous figure who needed to be eliminated. They also had their own concerns about growing Iranian influence in the region, and Hezbollah, being backed by Iran, was viewed as a significant threat to their interests.
So a common enemy brought the CIA and the Saudis together for this operation.
It appears that way, although both parties have officially denied any involvement. However, multiple sources, including Woodward, maintain that the Saudis agreed to finance the operation and provide logistical support, playing a critical role behind the scenes.
And what was their chosen method for eliminating Fadlallah? Did they revert back to a poison blot?
No, they opted for a tactic that had become tragically familiar in Beirut. A car bomb.
A car bomb.
The irony is striking. The CIA, having been targeted by car bombs, decided to employ the same method against their perceived enemy.
It's a stark reminder of how violence often begets more violence.
Yes.
And how the tools of terrorism can be adopted by those fighting against it. it raises questions about the long-term consequences of these actions.
Right.
And whether they ultimately contribute to a cycle of retribution.
It's a crucial point to consider.
Yeah.
The decision to use a car bomb, even against a target deemed a terrorist, speaks volumes about the mindset and the ethical complexities that we need to unpack further.
So what was the outcome of this plan?
Okay.
Were they successful in eliminating Fatlallah?
The operation was carried out in March 1985. Okay.
A truck packed with explosives was detonated in Fadlallah's neighborhood.
Okay.
However, the attack went terribly wrong.
In what way did the bomb malfunction?
The bomb functioned as intended, but Fadlallah wasn't killed.
What?
Instead, the blast claimed the lives of 83 innocent people.
Oh, my God.
Mostly women and children.
That is terrible.
It was a devastating failure.
Yeah.
A public relations nightmare for the CIA.
Yeah.
And a moral stain on everyone involved.
That's a horrific outcome.
Yeah.
Not only did they fail to eliminate their target, but they caused massive collateral damage, further escalating the cycle of violence they were trying to stop.
Exactly.
This must have had significant repercussions for the CIA.
It did.
Yeah.
The bombing was met with widespread condemnation, both internationally and domestically.
Right.
It raised serious questions about the CIA's accountability, their methods, and their ability to distinguish between combatants and civilians.
Yeah. In these types of operations.
It seems like a turning point for the agency.
It is.
Forcing them to confront the limitations of their Cold War mentality and the complexities of fighting terrorism in a world where clear battle lines are often blurred.
That's precisely the turning point we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
The Beirut bombing, and specifically the botched Fadlallah operation, had a profound impact on the CIA. It wasn't just about the tragic loss of life, but also about recognizing that their existing methods were ill-suited for dealing with the emerging threat of terrorism, a threat that operated outside the traditional rules of engagement.
This deep dive has already been quite a journey.
It has.
Taking us from Cold War plots to daring escapes and the brutal realities of terrorism. It's been incredibly insightful so far.
And we're not done yet. In the next part. We'll delve into how the CIA evolved in response to these events, the changes they implemented, and the ongoing challenges they face. In a world where the nature of threats continues to evolve, we'll explore the creation of the Counterterrorism Center, the rise of drone warfare, and the constant struggle to balance national security with democratic values.
We left off discussing the tragic consequences of the Beirut bombing. And the botched attempt on Sheikh Fadlallah's life. It seems like a defining moment for the CIA. A stark realization that their old ways of operating weren't effective in this new landscape of terrorism.
It was a wake-up call. The Beirut bombing exposed the limitations of the CIA's Cold War mindset and the need for a fundamental shift in their approach to counterterrorism.
So how did the CIA actually adapt in response to these events? Did they simply double down on their existing tactics, or did they seek out new strategies?
There was a definite recognition within the agency that they needed to evolve. The Beirut bombing and the failed Fadlallah operation highlighted the risks and unintended consequences of their previous methods. Collateral damage, which is often seen as a regrettable but unavoidable side effect, became a major point of concern. It was clear that such incidents could undermine their entire mission and turn public opinion against them.
It sounds like a turning point in their approach to covert operations. If they weren't going to rely on car bombs and covert assassinations, what alternatives did they explore?
One significant development was the creation of the Counterterrorism Center, or CTC, in 1986. This was a direct response to the Beirut bombing and the realization that the CIA needed a dedicated unit to focus specifically on the evolving threat of terrorism.
So they were finally acknowledging that terrorism was a unique challenge, not just a side effect of the Cold War.
Exactly.
This seems like a major shift in their thinking.
The CTC was a recognition that terrorism required a specialized approach. One that brought together analysts, operatives, and specialists from different parts of the CIA. It was about creating a more integrated and focused approach to counterterrorism. Pooling resources and expertise to effectively combat this new type of enemy.
You mentioned earlier that the Beirut bombing forced the CIA to rethink their reliance on more kinetic approaches. With the establishment of the CTC, did they move away from tactics like assassinations and car bombs?
There was a definite shift in their thinking. The Beirut bombing demonstrated the dangers of those tactics, the potential for unintended consequences, and the damage they could inflict on the CIA's reputation and credibility. They needed to find more precise and less indiscriminate methods.
So what did this new approach look like? What tools or strategies did the CIA begin to prioritize in the fight against terrorism?
One technology that started to emerge as a potential solution was unmanned aerial vehicles, or drones, as we know them today.
That seems like a significant leap from the world of Cold War espionage and clandestine operations we discussed earlier.
It is a major technological advancement, but it aligns with the lessons learned from Beirut. Drones offered the possibility of conducting targeted strikes with a reduced risk of collateral damage, and they could operate in environments deemed too dangerous for human operatives. They represented a way for the CIA to project power while minimizing risk to their own personnel.
So the seeds of the drone program, which has become so controversial in recent years, were sown in the ashes of the Beirut bombing.
In a way, yes.
Why?
The desire for more precise and less risky methods of combating terrorism, coupled with advancements in technology, led the CIA down this path. Of course, it took time for drone technology to mature to the point where it could be effectively deployed in combat. But the Beirut bombing and the CIA's experiences in Lebanon undoubtedly played a role in pushing them to explore these new capabilities.
It's fascinating to see how a single event can have such a ripple effect shaping the course of history and influencing the development of technologies that we're still grappling with today.
It highlights the interconnected nature of events and how even tragic failures can lead to innovation and change, although the ethical implications of those changes are often debated for years to come.
The creation of the CTC and the exploration of drone technology seem like significant steps in the CIA's evolution. But the world was changing rapidly. The Cold War was coming to an end, and new threats were emerging. How did these global shifts impact the CIA's mission and their approach to intelligence gathering?
The fall of the Soviet Union in 1991 marked a pivotal moment. It was the end of an era that had defined the CIA's existence for decades. But instead of becoming obsolete, the agency had to adapt to a new global landscape. One that was more complex and unpredictable.
So instead of facing off against a single superpower enemy, they were now confronted with a multitude of threats, each requiring a different strategy.
Exactly.
Wow.
The world was no longer neatly divided along ideological lines. The CIA now had to contend with rogue states, terrorist networks, the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and the rise of cyber warfare. These were threats that hadn't even been on their radar during the height of the Cold War.
It must have been a challenging time for the agency, navigating this new terrain and trying to redefine their role in a world that was changing so rapidly.
It was a period of adaptation and reinvention. The CIA had to reassess their priorities, develop new capabilities, and adjust to a more fluid and multifaceted threat environment.
And how did they approach this challenge? Did they cling to their old ways of doing things, or did they embrace change and innovation?
The CIA recognized that they couldn't simply rely on the methods that had served them during the Cold War. They needed to become more flexible, more adaptable, and more technologically savvy to effectively address these emerging threats.
So they were embracing a more proactive approach, anticipating threats rather than reacting to them.
That was the goal. The CIA invested heavily in intelligence gathering and analysis, trying to stay ahead of the curve and identify potential threats before they materialized. They also expanded their partnerships with other intelligence agencies around the world, recognizing that global threats required global cooperation.
It sounds like a period of significant transformation for the CIA.
It was.
Almost like a second birth for the agency. But as they were adapting to this new world, did they manage to maintain the balance between national security and democratic values that we discussed earlier.
That balance was and continues to be a constant challenge. As the CIA expanded their powers and their reach, concerns about oversight and accountability grew louder. The agency's operations became increasingly shrouded in secrecy, making it difficult to assess the true extent of their activities and whether they were operating within the bounds of the law.
It seems like the very nature of their work, operating in the shadows, makes it difficult to ensure transparency and accountability.
It's a fundamental tension in their mission. The need for secrecy often clashes with the principles of open government and democratic oversight. Finding that balance, ensuring that the CIA's actions are both effective and ethical, is an ongoing struggle.
And this struggle became even more pronounced after the 9/11 attacks, didn't it?
It did.
That event seemed to reshape the entire national security landscape. And push the CIA into a more prominent role in the fight against terrorism.
9/11 was a watershed moment, not just for the CIA, but for the entire U.S. intelligence community. It exposed vulnerabilities and failures that had been simmering beneath the surface. It became painfully clear that they were ill-prepared to deal with this new breed of enemy, highly motivated, decentralized, and willing to use unconventional tactics on a scale that few had anticipated.
So how did the CIA respond to this new reality? Did they simply ramp up their existing efforts? Or did they undergo another fundamental shift in their approach?
The response to 9/11 was multifaceted. The CIA, along with other intelligence agencies, received a significant increase in funding and resources. The Counterterrorism Center, which had been established in response to the Beirut bombing, became the focal point of the agency's efforts.
So the CTC, which was initially created to address a specific type of threat, was now at the forefront of a global war on terrorism.
Exactly.
Wow.
The CTC's mission expanded dramatically after 9/11. They recruited thousands of new personnel, established new outposts around the world, and were tasked with not only gathering intelligence, but also disrupting terrorist networks, conducting covert operations, and even engaging in paramilitary activities.
It sounds like the CIA was evolving into a more militarized organization, blurring the lines between intelligence gathering and direct action.
To a certain extent, yes. The distinction between intelligence and military operations became increasingly blurred in the post-9/11 world.
Where its CIA, with its global reach, its expertise in covert action, and its tradition of operating in the shadows, was seen as a valuable asset in the war on terror.
But as the CIA's role expanded, did concerns about oversight and accountability resurface?
Absolutely. The expansion of the CIA's powers and the increasing secrecy surrounding their operations raised concerns about mission creep, the potential for abuse, and the lack of transparency.
It seems like a classic dilemma. The need for secrecy to protect national security versus the need for transparency to safeguard democratic values.
It's a tension that has always been present in the CIA's work, but it became even more pronounced after 9/11. The agency was operating in a new environment, facing a new enemy, and using new methods. And as we'll see in the next part of our deep dive, these changes led to some controversial programs and practices
that continue to be debated today.
We left off discussing the CIA's transformation after 9/11. And the expansion of their role in the fight against terrorism. It seems like a period marked by both significant advancements and difficult ethical questions.
You're right. The post-9/11 era pushed the CIA into uncharted territory, leading to the development of controversial programs and sparking debates about the balance between national security and individual rights.
One program that stands out in the research you provided is the use of enhanced interrogation techniques. A topic that has generated immense controversy. Can you shed some light on what these techniques entailed and how they came to be implemented?
In the wake of 9/11, there was immense pressure on the intelligence community to prevent another attack. The CIA was authorized to detain individuals suspected of involvement in terrorism and to extract information from them. This led to the implementation of enhanced interrogation techniques, which included methods like waterboarding, sleep deprivation, and stress positions.
These techniques have been widely condemned as torture by human rights groups and legal experts.
Yeah.
How did the CIA justify their use?
The CIA argued that these techniques were necessary
Okay.
to gather vital intelligence that could prevent future attacks.
Right.
They claimed that traditional interrogation methods were ineffective against hardened terrorists, and that these enhanced techniques were the only way to break their resistance and obtain crucial information.
But the effectiveness of these techniques and the intelligence they produced has been disputed.
Yeah.
Some argue that the information obtained through torture is unreliable.
Right.
And that it can lead to false confessions and misleading intelligence.
Right.
What's your perspective on this debate?
It's a complex issue with strong arguments on both sides. Critics of enhanced interrogation techniques point to the ethical and legal implications, as well as the potential for abuse.
Right.
They argue that torture is never justified, regardless of the perceived benefits.
Right.
On the other hand, proponents of these techniques maintain that they were effective in some cases, and that they helped to prevent attacks.
This debate about enhanced interrogation techniques really highlights the ethical dilemmas that intelligence agencies face when trying to balance security and human rights.
Absolutely. It raises questions about what methods are acceptable in the pursuit of national security and whether the ends justify the means.
Right.
These are questions that continue to resonate today as we grapple with the legacy of the post-9/11 era and the choices that were made.
Another significant development in the post-9/11 era was the expansion of the CIA's drone program.
Yeah.
We touched on the origins of drone warfare earlier, but it seems like their use really escalated in the years following the attacks.
That's correct. The CIA's drone program, which had been relatively small scale before 9/11, grew exponentially in the years that followed.
Wow.
Drones became a central tool in the fight against terrorism, particularly in regions like Pakistan, Yemen, and Somalia.
What were the advantages of using drones in these counterterrorism operations?
Drones offered several advantages from a military and intelligence perspective.
Okay.
They allowed for targeted strikes against individuals suspected of terrorism without the need to deploy ground troops, minimizing the risk to U.S. personnel. They also provided persistent surveillance capabilities, allowing the CIA to monitor potential targets for extended periods.
But the use of drones has also been highly controversial.
Yeah.
There are concerns about civilian casualties, the lack of transparency surrounding drone strikes, and the legal framework governing their use.
Those are valid concerns.
Yeah.
Critics of the drone program argue that it lacks accountability, that it often results in civilian deaths, and that it creates a dangerous precedent for the use of lethal force without due process.
It seems like the drone program, like enhanced interrogation techniques, raises fundamental questions about the balance of power, the rule of law, and the ethics of warfare in the 21st century.
It does. The increasing reliance on technology, particularly in the realm of intelligence and warfare, presents new challenges and forces us to re-examine our traditional notions of accountability, transparency, and the limits of state power.
As we delve deeper into the CIA's evolution, we can't overlook their adaptation to the digital age. It seems almost paradoxical that an agency known for secrecy and covert operations is now engaging in public relations campaigns on social media platforms like Twitter and Instagram.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it reflects the changing nature of intelligence work in the 21st century. The CIA recognizes that they can't just operate in the shadows anymore. They need to engage with the public, shape narratives, and build trust, even as they conduct their covert operations.
So it's about managing perceptions, not just gathering intelligence and conducting operations.
Exactly. In the digital age, information is a weapon.
Wow.
And the CIA is adapting their tactics accordingly. They understand that public opinion matters, and they're using social media to influence perceptions, counter misinformation, and promote their own narrative.
This deep dive has been a fascinating journey.
It has.
Revealing the complex and ever-evolving nature of the CIA.
Yeah.
From Cold War espionage to drone warfare and social media campaigns. They've had to adapt to a rapidly changing world.
It's a story of innovation, adaptation, and at times, controversy The CIA's history is full of triumphs and failures, reflecting the difficult choices and ethical dilemmas they face in their pursuit of national security.
As we conclude this exploration,
Yeah.
what key takeaways would you highlight for our listener?
I think it's crucial to understand that the CIA,
Okay.
like any powerful institution, operates in a complex and often opaque world.
Right.
Their work is essential, but it also demands scrutiny and oversight.
Right.
It's important to stay informed, engage in critical thinking, and ask tough questions about their methods, their accountability, and the balance between security and freedom.
Those are important reminders for all of us as we navigate the complexities of the 21st century. This deep dive has given our listener a lot to consider, showcasing the CIA's evolution, the challenges they face, and the ethical questions their actions raise.
Right.
Thanks for joining us on this insightful journey.
It was my pleasure.